1.
Hello, everybody. Thanks for tuning in to tonight's live poetry reading. We got an excellent group of poets reading tonight. Donna Isaac, Cheryl Wilke, Dave Rannow, and Clarence White. As usual, I'll start the reading with a couple of my poems. The first one is from my book Dog. It's called April Leaving. Now the last remnants of snowstorms are melting into threats of thunderstorms. She always smiled as you passed the house walking your dogs. The budding has begun as the spikes of tulips started to rip the ground. Many greens are starting to show. You heard the fights from a distance and saw that she was packing a car. Ants have appeared on the sidewalk, a frenzy of movement. Perhaps like the geese and the ducks, she is returning to more familiar ground. In May, you will walk the dogs, meeting one less smile. And this next poem is a series of poems I've been working on using a different letter of the alphabet for each poem. So a lot of alliteration and that kind of stuff. This one is called Wandering Wonder. Wanda, not the witch, wondered why Willie was referred to as the Wanderer when he seldom left his West Side apartment in Wisconsin. Wendy wondered as well, but not as wistfully as Wanda. She thought the answer was in the wild whistle heard when Willie gazed out his window, dreaming about the widow Mrs. Whitmore, who passed by when walking her dog, Wesley, on Wednesdays. Wendy started to wonder how woeful Willie's dreams wrapped the inside of his head. How weary. Wanda disagreed, figuring he was working on something wonderful. But really, Willie was just wondering on where Waddle was exactly. And now we'll start with our first poet. Poet Donna Isaac is a teaching artist and organizer of community readings such as Literary Lights and workshops through the League of Minnesota Poets. She holds degrees from James Madison University, the University of Minnesota, and Hamline University. Published poetry work includes Footballs, Pocahontas Press, Tommy, Red Dragonfly Press, Holy Comforter, Redbird Chapbooks, and Persistence of Vision, Finishing Line Press. Her work also appears in journals such as the St. Paul Almanac and the Penn Review. Website, DonnaIsaacPoet.com. Take it away, Donna.
Thank you, Ron. Thank you, Valerie. And thanks to all the other readers. I'm sorry it's a little blurry. I don't know what's going on, but I've chosen 8 poems, some new ones and old ones to read tonight. I'd like to start with a poem from my Red Dragonfly Press chapbook called Tommy. And as some of you might know, Scott King, the owner of Red Dragonfly Press, recently died at a young age. So I'm dedicating this to him and also to my brother, because the book is a book of elegiac poems for him. He died when he was in his 40s. There's a little story behind this. When he was, a few days before he passed away, he was agitated and he got up and he looked for his toolbox and he wanted to show his wife how to turn off some gas, and he never really did accomplish that. So this poem came from that experience. It's called Strength. It needs a strong winch driver to hoist a star, one spectacular, hard-hatted man to bring aloft a drift of brilliant bands that gird and trust the sky, this universe which we perceive with bleary stare, such calloused hands that held the ropes and strained to keep his world in place. Those muscled arms pulled taut the veil of night and quivered mightily to keep Orion locked in grace. With pulleys, weights, and wheels, the stars, they lit the sky and shimmered, stilling. When last the tools he laid away, now untouched, the pliers, the wrench that turned the bolt that fatal day. Next poem is just some news things I've thrown in the mix. I've been having to put closed captioning on a lot of my TV viewing lately, so this kind of came from that, and it meshed with viewing the natural world. It's called Indistinct Chatter. Not to be outdone, the rain sighs in pine tops, clamber of painted turtle, bud unfurling. In dreams, limbed mother in white gold says but does not say, motions of gathering, moment of bread. Beneath the ice-rimmed pond, wordless O of bubbles. Worms move earth, continent drifts. Who will answer whispered questions or even listen, please, for air? The creep of vine over mute stone transforms quiet creation. A kind of closed captioning, these field notes, incidental music, a din. And the next is another new one. It's called Subterranean Blues, with apologies to Bob Dylan. Don't all things need light? Not moles or earthworms, phonic creatures, dark holes, deep sea, but for the rest, the corn, sunflowers, Diwali, Hanukkah, people with sad. Amidst the churned troughs of French battlefields, poppies arose around the twisted dead. In a Holocaust tale, a lit candle brings hope and peace to two children crouched in a cellar. A waterfowl wings towards subsiding light, a southern marsh, red-winged blackbird on a cattail, egret in vogue. When you peer through a telescope, isn't it always about the light? Bless the light, the saving of it, the keeping of it, the basking in it. Bless carriers of fire, lanterns in a cave, sparkles upon sea or ice. The wet look of leaves, dimes shine, sun filtered through canopies of redwood, sequoia, spruce. Bless the lighthouse, Caravaggio, Einstein, the light bulb, the sun, the moon, the stars, that final light into which we walk. All righty. This poem is from a book called Footballs. And my sisters and I traveled one summer to travel down the crooked, it's called the Crooked Road. It's in Virginia, and it takes you to American roots music places. And so we did that, and we went to a fiddler's convention. So this is a little vignette from that time. It's called Boys Like These. At the fiddler's convention, I am enthralled by the girly boy with blonde hair and cupid lips who smokes a Marlboro Light, and the hipster crooked road dude that waits for two girls who trot up the grandstand steps to meet them, one with meaty thighs wearing checkerboard hot pants, and one with haystack hair bobby pinned around tufts that sprout from her head a la Sputnik. They're so cool, they break my heart. Once I turned heads in my striped sundress, bare arms, sunshine-streaked hair, accompanied by a boy like this, whose touch turned me into butter and cream and all things delicious. How am I doing on time? I think I'm almost out of time. I'll cut this one, and I'll have two more to read. This one, I started to think about the 3 minutes. So, okay. I started to think about the fact that people fight each other because they are different or other. So this poem came out of that. It's called Imaginative Hat. What if, instead of bodies, we were beacons of light, streaks of energy, with eyes to see and mouths to talk, to eat, but otherwise floating? We might have two beams for arms, to reach, to hug, no other distinguishable features. Would people still criticize, hate our sparkle, our intensity, having no color, no corporality, no caste? We could, however, wear clothing to damp down or dress up, little hats, if you wish. We greet each other with a glow like the eponymous worm or Hydra Medusa, a tip of acknowledging commonality. We cannot kill or maim light. No crushed windpipes, battered bodies, shoppers shot in produce sections. When our time came, we'd rise into the sky and become part of the galaxy, a star, a distant moon, something in the world, but no longer of this world, our true essence. Thank you. And this is my last poem, another new one. And this is just thinking about the future. Thanks for listening. Anticipatory set. Where does the bee go after the hollyhock? A stick boy with a blue balloon waited to see the bumbles so ripe in summer air. Doesn't everyone watch and wait? The ice is out on the lake, sky enough for bluebirds, flycatchers. What else is coming? The eagle cam shows a clutch of 3 eggs. Amazon package on the porch. Why are we the lucky ones? Earth unscorched, bodies in motion, a starburst heart on a sonogram. When will we be together? It will be autumn before we know. We'll have cake. Thank you.
Although she can't hear you, why don't everybody give Donna a round of applause? You cannot kill or maim light. Great line. Thank you very much, Donna. Our next poet is Cheryl Wilke. Cheryl W. Wilke was born and raised on the small town prairies of central Minnesota, author of 2 chapbooks and 2 children's picture books available at Amazon.com. She writes with an earthly, spiritual awakening to the Main Street she grew up with. Her works appear in Dogwood, a journal of poetry and prose, Prairie Schooner, the Penwood Review, and Waterstone Review. Wilke resides in Minneapolis. Take it away, Cheryl.
Thank you, Ron, and thank you both, Ron and Valerie, for your invitation to read this evening. I appreciate that. Just a little bit, I think Ron told it best with my background. I'm a small town girl. Although I've lived in the cities far longer than I've lived up there, I still call up north home. And a lot of my readings and writings have to do with small town growing up. That's where I was born and raised, and before I left for college and that. So I still look back, and my father is still there, my brothers are still there, so it's definitely home to me, and you'll recognize that in my readings. The first one I'd like to read is called Junk Birds. He called them junk birds, the little wrens and sparrows, ghosts of color unpolished as sterling. Pointing to a pile of bags, he told me to buy this brand of birdseed. He said it's a little more expensive, of course, but in time it will do what I want it to do. It will attract the crown jewels, the rubies and sapphires, the gold ones too, the ones that make bird watching worthwhile. He called the old outhouse gray ones that bring me songs of jonquils and daffodils all the year long, junk birds. The ones that feed my first smile each morning. He called my everyday silver junk. The next poem is called Store-Bought Potatoes. The other day, I opened a bag of store-bought potatoes. I went to rinse them at the sink, but they had all been machine brushed clean and smooth as a baby's bottom. What's up with that? I thought. Where's the dirt? I want to smell the soil, feel the rain, and sweat the sweat that went into planting, watering, and harvesting them. I want to wash clean my potatoes myself, then scrub my nails, then watch my toils and a part of me flow down the drain and back to where it all began, to begin again. In a sea of loamy fields shored by hickory trees and a pasture fence around Appaloosas and wild children. I want dirt with my store-bought potatoes. Farm girl, you spoke of their butchering, the chickens, how they fought like hell, attempting to peck and scratch your eyes out as you flashed the red axe through their necks. So unlike, you said, the goose, who looked at the block and laid her head down upon it, exposing her neck just so that you could not do it. Flour sack towels. I wasn't born in Brooklyn or Boston or San Francisco or somewhere equally as interesting with its well-storied cobblestone streets and brownstones. I was born on the flatland prairies of the Midwest, flyover fodder for coastal trendies, a place where John Deere tractors rumble. The smell of hot iron and grease is thick and slick as rain on the welder's floor. The furrows and fields deep enough now to grow the seeds of children. No city girl, I gently fold and store flour sack towels like a grandmother. These domestic cloths are all about where you come from, who you are, and where you are going. They travel light, but their handiwork is heavy. Wear it long. Let your hair grow long beyond the locks of middle age. Let it turn feather white, flutter in the wind with the magic and folklore of mothers who came before you. Let it survive all seasons until death do us part. Let ends split and reach beyond the fork in Old Man River. Let your daughters scorn, you're too old to wear it, untwisted, unbridled, unbridled, unfettered. Let it flow and fall to the ground, heavy with all life's sorrows. Let your secrets and pleasures tangle in each strand like a rabbit snare. Revel against the shear keepers of status quo. Wear it long. And my final one is called Small Town Sidewalks. I recall sidewalks bustling with moms and dads, grandparents, ladies sporting handkerchiefs and heels, men in dungarees and work boots. Saturday's Main Street sidewalks aflutter with American flags, Memorial Day's crepe paper poppies, nickel shiny bicycles, and paved or patched generations of small town families. Thank you.
Thank you, Cheryl. Cheryl has often been one of my favorite poets. Excellent person to workshop with. If you know you can get a poem by where she approves every line, you've done really amazing. Next poet is Dave. Dave is co-organizer of the Twin Cities Poetry Workshop, where he's been fostering local voices, including his own, for almost a decade. Dave is also an excellent workshopper. I could almost say the same thing about him that I said about Cheryl. Dave draws inspiration from popular culture, the natural world, and the connections between people in the hope of making some small sense of big ideas. His works emphasize wordplay and alliteration while drawing power from short stanzas and a well-placed couplet. Let's hear Dave.
Thanks, Ron. Thanks, Valerie and MTN for hosting and asking me to participate. I really appreciate it. As I was gathering poems tonight, I noticed that all of my poetry is still in what I call my revisions folder. And I got some that are I'm satisfied with, but plenty are not. And so, I'm thinking that, like, if there's a theme for the poems I'm going to read tonight, like my poetry needing revision, it would be still trying to figure it out. This first poem is called Everyday Fear. I have this irreducible fear. Bending to retrieve paper-bagged groceries, I will scratch my eye on the serrated edge. How awkward I must look with my eyes shut tight or my head strained away, trying to escape. This happened to my father years ago. Alone with my brother at that precarious age, having learned just enough fear of their late return, but no longer able to scare enough to warrant a babysitter. He had a patch over his eye, one full of medical tape and horror. My mother led him, half-blind, back to normalcy. Living alone now, if this happened to me, I don't know what I would do. How do I accomplish any number of things? I would probably sit on the hard ground and cry. This next poem comes from something that happened while I was on a train ride to the Lake District on a trip to England. I still don't really know what happened, but as I hope this poem expresses, I don't think knowing is really the point. The incident at Hagfold station. This happens first. We don't start. Then that something is wrong slowly slides in the carriage door unclosed. That slow time of someone else's crisis. Long minutes stretch and bulge, and after anger, after frustration and corrupted time, do we dissipate to ourselves. A woman weeps by herself, but not for herself. Parents tend, children fitful, unraveling. Riders agitate plans, make calls to those beyond waiting. Outside the train, a man begs proximity and the open air to award him the knowledge we all seek, to make him the first hero of understanding. But then his daughter joins him on the platform, and in him something switches on, or maybe off. Again, he is everything she needs him to be. All of her being only half of him. With arms around his waist, she uses him as a pillar. She uses him paternally. Both seek understanding, but where he is waiting, she is wanting. She knows death, but yet not these moments still in need of names. The wheelchair returns empty to our car, then everything happens backwards and unrushed. By the window, first the defibrillator and later the gurney. Frail bones underneath an oxygen mask. The gurney, the defibrillator, the sirens. Would you all get back on the train? Keeping with an England theme for a moment, this next poem comes from a concert I went to by an English musician, Johnny Flynn. If you're not familiar with him, I highly recommend checking him out. He came out of the late 2000s new folk scene in London that spawned acts like Laura Marling and Mumford & Sons. I happen to think he is superior to those who followed him. And I think his best album is probably Alarum, as in exunt with Alarum. But my poem closes with lines from his third effort, Country Mile. Space Invaders. Space Invaders blips and chirps through the collective silence brought forth by the scholar's guitar. The absurdity makes me laugh, put my head down on the sticky table. Waiting for lines of undeniable truth, a lullaby of space and stars' birth and connection. Real life begins to seep in around me. My one friend sucks in air, the other vapor. The rest giggle, swill their drinks, or just stand quiet in rapture, entranced. When the words come, I stare straight at the poet, begging presence to surrender additional mystery. Go blind for a moment and see each of your faces in turn. Standing, though apart in our celestial bodies, we speak in unison with the universe. The gap in between them is nothing to us. Our eyes cut the distance, as loving eyes must. I've got two more, and I don't want to say a lot about this next one, other than it's one of my favorites, and it's one that I would probably move out of my revisions folder. The houses of the dead. Your eyes fill with a particular kind of greed, being told you may have whatever you like from the houses of the dead. Confronted guiltlessly with want, the picture on the wall and the nail behind it, this is not estate, marked and priced. This is rummage, a mass and haul. Sweating out all the things we gather quietly, the jewelry box and the junk drawer. It's not about attachment, no relation. Still certain nervousness, drooling eyes wide at each ask of the bereaved, your windfall of their loss. But this is grief, a fixing of another's life, that acquisition in entire collections of a person absorbed in pieces. Else we would still own each heartbreak alone, piled until immovable in the rooms of ourselves. My last one comes from time spent on Palisade Head. It's a fantastic overlook along Lake Superior. If you've never been, go, but go early. It's quite popular. Palisade Head. Superior winds separate the water like almost done jello. And I am the kid on Palisade Head, still waiting to make shapes, waiting to make waves. Thank you.
Thank you, Dave. Nice job. I think a lot of those are pretty polished. I don't know if it's ever safe to take a poem out of the revisions folder, however, but those were pretty nice. Next up is we have Clarence White. Clarence is a writer, editor, Clarence is a writer, editor, typewriter, poet, curator, and arts administrator. He's been published in the St. Paul Almanac, Suisun Valley Review, Public Art Review, and Martin Lake Journal. His essay Smart Enough for Ford appears in Blues Vision, African American Writing from Minnesota. He was co-curator of the 2016-17 Banfield Lock Reading Series and Silverwood Park's 2014 Art on Foot. He was a Gibbons Retreat Fellow and a finalist for MinnesotaArtists.org's Flash Fiction Contest and mini stories. He's a writer who works in essay when he believes that conversation is possible and poetry when he is less hopeful. He doesn't know if his ideas are big, redundant, or just ideas that have been gaslighted into oblivion, but hopes to make those ideas small enough so that some will understand or find comfort in sanity. Get ready for Clarence White.
Well, thanks, Ron, and thanks, Valerie, and thanks, Minneapolis Television Network. I'm under a little bit of pressure here because everyone else came in under time. We're allotted an amount of time, and everyone did less. So I'll see what I can do. What I'm going to read tonight are mostly poems that I've written that I sort of call the pandemic series. I've been writing poems on typewriter, which is what I do, and sending them in postcards to people. So there isn't much revision or editing. I mean, once you send it off and once it's on the paper, you can't really revise it. I've done a little bit, but not much. So I always listen to you guys and it's like, oh, I reworked it and reworked this. And it's like, that kind of requires like looking at the stuff that you wrote, and I don't always like doing that. So anyway, I can't really tell if the poems are good or not, but they are what they are, and this is what I've been sending through the mail. So I'll get started. The first one is called Always the Weather, and it's my pandemic poem number 25. The sun came up again, tricked my head into an instance of happy. Sometimes I love the rain. It is water. It makes a sound that will let your soul rest. A trip on water might kill you. A trip to the sun will perish you before you can say, are we there yet? The sun, this water, they give life. Is this cruel, or is it their virtue? Fortunes are won and lost on guilt-adorned teddy bears, baubles lost at the bottom of the sea, or they vaporize in a moment, falling back to earth like an ungrateful Icarus. The liberated spoils falling in drops from the sky, back to the barker's hand, his stacked deck, the new morality. Okay, the next one is called I'm Beautiful If I Try, pandemic poem number 48. I know she sees the sides of me that I hide from the mirror. The beauty of sleep betrays the mistakes of my vanity. Is it bravery that leads us to points of vulnerability or virtue? Or is it a mistake? I think so. We do not talk of the paths not taken because we have no choice when we are an accidental sleeping beauty. That kind of beauty that shows up only in her eyes and only in the light that catches the angle I hurriedly deflect in the moment of reflection that only hates me. This next one is called Remember Me to My Enemies, and it's pandemic poem number 45. Who was it who said, it is wrong to speak ill of the dead, as if we are free today from the stabbing whispers behind our back? As we pass from this world, the traces of our sins are enough to burn the ears in every grave. When I transition into the light, my transgressions will meet grace, meet the tongues of spite, meet the memory of my repentance. Still, I dabble in the folly of writing my own eulogy in the invisible ink called morality. I heard Ron start out with a poem about someone walking a dog, and I had a poem that I was thinking about reading that starts out with someone walking a dog, but I let it pass. But a few of you have put birds in your poems, and I think they always help poetry. I think maybe lifts it up or lets it fly a little bit. So I just put one in hoping that a good poem would come out. I don't know if it really does, but it got me started. So this one's called Gray Songbird Easter. It's pandemic poem number 55. Her voice echoes in the gray, brutalist, modern sarcophagus, perfect pitch of an angel. Surely it will roll the stone from the opening, stream in the sunlight, bouncing through the prisms, fracturing into every note the body can hear. Reverberations in her chest remind her of the overcast, undercast, lowbrow fashion that still does not rain. She knows not his fear, trapped in the clouds, and the whole of her love falls on deaf ears. Of course, you can tell that was an Easter poem. It always strikes me that Easter is not the most important, at least contemporarily, not the most important holiday in the Christian religion, which maybe says something about the state of Christianity, because I would think it would be important to people, but I'm not trying to cancel Christmas if anyone is going to send me hate mail. But anyway, this next poem wasn't one of the pandemic series. So the past few Septembers during Open Streets in Minneapolis, Julia Klatzinger and I have been outside of Butter typing poetry. So I don't know if Open Streets is going to happen this year, but whether it does or not, probably some Sunday late in September we'll be out in front of Butter typing poems. And I think this is one that I wrote either then or just before that. It does not have a title. If someone can think of one, they can send it to me. Anyway, do not worry, this grief you are, I'm sorry, let me start over. Do not worry, this grief you do not feel is hidden, waiting behind your fight. Save your tears. One day you will need them to extinguish a rage that will consume you before it changes the world. I remember when you were that child, the one who never cried. One day your tears will make a river away to that justice and your peace. Oops. Okay, I'll do a couple more. So I'm not as disciplined as everyone else. Decisions. I'm not good at this. Let's do this one. This violence is masquerading as a breakup pop song. Pandemic poem number 42. There must be something that turns your ear, some sweet song that falls on the strings of your heart, or the wail of a voice too familiar, one you cannot suffer yourself to hear, not a broken heart, but one torn out of this jagged thorax. With edges too rough to mend, we don't even craft a song for this lost love life we pretend mattered. You can now return to that earbug song of the TV version of Summer Romance, Winter of Loneliness. And I'll do one more. If people don't have a typewriter, they should get a typewriter. I have too many, so talk to me, I can hook you up. Not necessarily with one of mine, but it's really good to have. So this last one is just called Pandemic Poem number 28. And it goes like this. In the dampness of the summer air, the thunder growls through the lighted pitcher, patter exploding twice before your eyes, wishing it were under the shelter from the storm, casting the briefest light, bold bolts wedging between hopeless hearts. A flash, crash, the heavy sky finally lets loose with torrent, the unburdened secret, thick clouds covering cross stars. But what is the secret with no one here to share your place, to stand empty and silent? My gut rumbles in the thunder of your memory. So thanks, everyone.
Thank you, Clarence. I enjoyed those poems very much. Glad you were with us. Thanks, everybody, for listening in. Next reading is slated for June 20th. To sign off, I'm going to read a poem by Emily Dickinson. I reckon, when I count it all, first poets, then the sun, then summer, then the heaven of God, and then the list is done. But looking back, the first soul seems to comprehend the whole. The others look a needless show. So I write, poets all. Their summer lasts a solid year. They can afford a sun the East would deem extravagant. And if the further heaven be beautiful as they prepare, for those who worship them, it is too difficult a grace to justify the dream. Thank you, everybody. Thank you, poets. Have a great night. Enjoy the rest of the weekend.
Thank you, Ron.
Thank you, everybody.